evening. My name is Anthony Davis, local president of the NAACP here in Kenosha, and also a member of the Wisconsin State Conference, where we're being led by Wendell J. Harris. First of all, I'd like to give my thoughts and prayers to the family of Jacob Blake. They're going through a difficult time.
I would say,
as it is said, you have to give a family time to deal with these situations. We know a lot of folks are trying to get to them each and every day.
if you're in the hospital fighting for your life and you've had your spleen almost cut completely in two, or your back or something, I don't know, they claim he's probably going to be paralyzed the rest of his life, I would say you're having a difficult time. Now, if you'll read through the readings, it says, or it will say, don't say right now, that he admitted that he had a pig sticker. We call them pig stickers down here in Tennessee. Just a little knife, something you can cut a piece of rope, or something you can clean your fingernails, or etc. Didn't say he had the knife pulled. It just said that he admitted that he had a knife. Whenever it comes to that, I'll stop to bring that to your attention.
But in these times, give them some time to heal. We know that this incident came to Kenosha unexpectedly. And I just want to say, Kenosha is not a place where...
There you go. Read that. Led up to the shooting, Jacob Blake admitted he had a knife in his possession. That's what they're saying that he said. Now, I don't know that he actually said that. And there was no evidence that he had a knife in his hand as he was walking around the front of the vehicle towards getting back into the car. But once more, he was trying to get away from the police officers. He wasn't trying to fight them. He was trying to get away from them. He didn't want no more of that commotion. He had 3 kids in the back end of the car he had to take care of. And these cops are dragging him down, pulling his shirt off his body as he's attempting to get in the driver's door, and they lay into him. Boom, 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 boom. I was told that 4 of the shots actually hit him, and 3 of them did not, but a total of 7 shots was hit. But God only knows what these cops are going to come up with in their story of what they're saying that justified them pulling out a gun and trying to basically publicly execute this man right in front of his very own children.
We see things like this every day. We need to come together. And I appreciate the state DA, Josh Call, and our local DA here in Kenosha coming to us and trying to share what they can at this time. The process, we know, is not going to be one that's going to be quick, but we know that we are part of the process here. And we ask, number one, have some patience. We also want everyone to understand we have to find a way to de-escalate what has been happening around here in our city. As I said, we are in the process of trying to mourn through this. But the path that has been taken by some individuals has not been appreciated. Let us have our say as a community. Let us be patient. And above all, let us keep God in the process. Thank you.
All right, next up we have James Hall.
All right. We are monitoring this press conference in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Our Omar Jimenez is there. They're going to be taking questions in just a few moments, so we're going to be monitoring that. The Attorney General was speaking, of course, the District Attorney and the head of the Wisconsin NAACP. Joey Jackson back with me. So, Joey, when you hear them speak, what do you hear most prominently?
Well, there's two things. The first thing is I have to say that I'm a little disappointed in the process. Let me explain why. What I'm hearing is that there's an independent investigation by the state. As a result of the law, the state agency comes in and they do the investigation. Thereafter, it is then submitted, it being the findings, to the local district attorney. Understand what that means. You have a local district attorney who's depending upon officers to build cases and other cases, who's depending upon officers to work with them collaboratively for the safety of the community. And that same local district attorney has to make an assessment as to whether to prosecute officers. That's a bit troubling to me. And it's troubling because unless you have a process wherein everything is independent, not only the investigation, but a determination as to the prosecution and whether it should occur, it's very difficult in that regard. The next thing, Aaron, briefly, is that you talk about a district attorney who's saying, the only thing I'm here for is to make an assessment as to whether we can prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt. That's a jury determination. And so I just wonder, hey, listen, whether or not in these cases, for example, it's put before a grand jury, they indict, let a jury of 12 decide. But when a district attorney unilaterally makes an assessment, and I get prosecutors have to decide whether they can prove the case, but that's very discretionary to me. And so I think ultimately when there's a question of fact, when there's a question, was there a knife, was there not a knife, this case doesn't appear to me to be a close question. When someone gets shot in the back 7 times, there's nothing close about that. And so I just wonder whether this process will allow itself, I pray it does, for fairness.
So Joey, let me ask you a couple things, because there's a lot we learned, but there's a lot that we still don't know. Right, so we know that the police get a call, dispatch gets a call from a woman who says that her ex-boyfriend is there and he's not allowed to be there, presumably some sort of restraining order or something, maybe. And so they go, and then there's Jacob Blake there. His attorney said he was at an 8-year-old's birthday party. But now we're hearing that he was that the woman there says she had a restraining order or something, presumably. There's kids in the back of his car. There just seems to be a lot that we still do not know, even though they say they're telling us a lot. I still am confused.
Well, this is true, and it's not unusual, Aaron, that there are going to be disputed facts. Was there a birthday party? Was there not? Was there a domestic violence incident, or was there not? What I'm looking for is what's informing an officer's judgment such that they come to the scene and they believe they have to pull out their weapons. There's a scuffle, we see that. But tactically, strategically, could you have done something else such that he didn't even need to get to, that is Mr. Blake, to the car, that you have the shooting in the first instance? Why is the gun drawn? And what's the immediacy of firing the weapon as many times as you did or at all? And so notwithstanding the front story, the back story, what I'm looking at is a...
Exactly. Besides that, if they would have just shot up into the air, shot down into the ground, maybe one shot would have stopped the whole occurrence. I don't know if they're allowed to do that anymore, but back in the Wild Wild West days, that's how they usually gave somebody a fighting chance. They'd shoot one shot up into the air, shoot it down into the ground, halt, and of course if they didn't halt after that first shot, then is whenever you got to go to a different level because this person didn't halt. But once more, it's also based around whether not the police officer that's telling that individual to halt, whether not he or she feels like that their life is in imminent danger. And there was nothing that I seen, even if the guy had a pig sticker in his hand, did not justify towards two cops pulling his clothes off of him and shooting him in the back like that. Unless the guy was actually stabbing this cop in the leg or stabbing him in the stomach or cutting him some way or another. I just don't see where this was justifiable shooting. I might be wrong. Maybe he was. Maybe instead of him just having a knife, maybe he was using a knife. I don't know. There's a lot of facts that the general public don't know about. But I know this. Whenever you see stuff like this on camera, you have to stop and question how come it takes so long for the DA, for the public offender, and for the governor and everybody else that's involved in these calls. How come it takes so long for them to embark upon to their authority towards doing the right thing for the community? That's what they done in Atlanta. They done the right thing for the community, and they settled that fire down because they knew that that was fixing to get out of hand. One or two people immediately quit their jobs. I mean, people's going to be held accountable whenever stuff like this happens. Not just the police officers, but the people that's in charge of the police officers.
Video, which is telling to me that this didn't need to happen. It did happen.
And so, Joey, so let me ask you. So what we learned now is that he admits he has a gun. We know from
A gun?
Rayshawn White, who filmed it. They were screaming at him to drop the knife. I'm sorry, that he had a knife. He said he had a knife. They're screaming at him to drop it, but he didn't have a knife on him. Right. So he goes to the front of the car. He leans into it. Now they don't say what he's leaning to do, but at this point, from their own words, they thought the knife was on him, and it wasn't. So they therefore did not know that it was in. It was on the front floorboards of the car, where maybe he was reaching for it and maybe he wasn't. So that's what we know as to why he's leaning in, and then 7 shots go into his back. Is there anything in that scenario that would justify, in any way, what Officer Rustin Chesky did?
Yeah, well, I say no, but beyond that, Aaron, I don't even think we know that. What we don't know in terms of was there actually a knife? I think there'll be forensic testing. Where did the knife come from? Are his fingerprints on it? That is Mr. Blake's fingerprints on it. Was the officer in a position, if there were a knife, to make the observation? Even if there was a knife, did he turn or act furtively towards the officer such that the officer could be justified in discharging his firearm?
7
the fact
times.
that there's a knife. Yeah, 7 times. We can't presume the fact that there's a knife. I'm not talking about conspiracy theories. I'm talking about evidence. Where did the knife come from? And to the extent that the knife was being picked up, was he picking up the knife? Did the officer observe that? And even if there was a knife there, what, if anything, was he doing with it such that the officer felt that he had an immediacy of a threat to respond in a deadly way?
Exactly.
The proportionality of the threat, the 7 shots is off, and the reasonability of the conduct is off. So I'm concerned about all those things if I'm a prosecutor moving forward.
All right, Joey, thank
Exactly.
you very much for laying all this out. As I said, if they take
Exactly.
questions, our Omar Jimenez is there. We're going to tell you what we find out. We are now less than a half an hour away from curfew in Kenosha as all this information just comes out. This information or lack thereof, with all the questions that you have, and this is now just 27 minutes away from that curfew beginning. So we're continuing to monitor this. Joey, I thank you. And we have breaking news as well with that life-threatening hurricane. This is a stunning hurricane. It's a monster category 4. It will be the strongest storm to ever strike Louisiana. We're talking about wind gusts of 175 miles an hour. Plus, more breaking news. NBA players taking an historic stand tonight. All 3 playoff games scheduled for this evening are called off. This because of Mr. Blake and Kenosha, Wisconsin. Bob Costas is out front.
To see these occurrences again and again and again, I mean, what's up with all that? These police officers are supposed to be trained. They're supposed to be trained in identifying not only threats, but they're supposed to be identified as being officers, peace officers, that are supposed to have as much patience or more patience than the people that they're pursuing, as far as them being patient in various situations. There's going to have to be a lot more rigorous investigations. But to have these two guys running free right now, I'm going to say is a big no-no, because their lives and their family lives is probably in danger right now. Because if some of those people in that town that knew this guy, if they know where these cops live, they'll probably come to their home, and God only knows what they'll do. It's bad that we're living in such horrible times right now, because of these administrations that chooses not to want to discipline their men right, or chooses not to want to follow the leads towards seeing various red flags going up that they probably, if you do an investigation on this particular cop, he may have been like that cop up there that murdered George Floyd. He may have had 4 or 5, 6 or 7 incidences in his background that was swept under the rug. In other words, he may have some sort of an abusive intolerableness towards not being patient and overcorrecting and being abusive to various people. He may have had several calls called on him pertaining to his actions. I don't know. This is some more work that the investigation team needs to do, and they need to do it pretty quickly, especially whenever you got people that's this hot under the collar. Whenever you have people that's this hot under the collar, sometimes you got to go beyond the call of duty and do the right thing in the eyes of the people. Kind of like what they done down there in Atlanta, or what they did do pertaining to George Floyd towards actually arresting that individual or individuals. But it needs to stop, because every time it happens, it causes a hullabaloo to rise up in this country. Good luck to all of us.